The Chicago Bulls lose another game at home, this time to the Boston Celtics, pushing them further away from that always eluding them 500 record. We're going to talk a little bit about that. First, we'll talk about how the Bulls defense has really slipped here over the last month and why it should be a big concern over their push to the play-in. And hopefully, maybe they're trying to get to the playoffs. So we're going to get into all that, plus a mailbag right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bulls Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bulls news and content.
What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that being said, let's go to get into this content for today. And so, first up, the Bulls lost a game to the Boston Celtics at home. And this is a game where the Bulls did stay in this game for longer than I think most people expected, right? Especially with the way that the Boston Celtics were shooting the three ball throughout that game. The Bulls kept this game extremely close. Yes, they did eventually lose by 11 points. And, the Boston Celtics had two different really large leads in this, went on different runs. But this is the best team in the league. And one of their biggest strengths plays into one of the Bulls' biggest Achilles heels, the fact that they shoot the three ball at a high rate and at a high percentage as well. Just it's hard for the Bulls to overcome that. They lost this game by a math issue. When you look at it, 21 three-pointers made by the Boston Celtics last night. That's 63 points that are generated just from the three-point line. And the Bulls ended up only losing by 11, right? They went 9 of 24 themselves, did the Chicago Bulls from the three-point line. And, unfortunately, it was just something that the Bulls could not overcome. That's not to say that it isn't of their own doing, right? The Bulls, in some possessions, had really good initial defense, and then they allowed the Boston Celtics to get those second chance opportunities, which is another thing that completely killed the Bulls. The Boston Celtics had 23 second chance points in this game to the Chicago Bulls only 2 second chance points. When you combine the math problem with the three-point shooting, with the inability to keep the Boston Celtics off the offensive boards and from second chance points, it just was too much to overcome for the Chicago Bulls, on top of the defense just not being the level of defense that we saw. And you got to give all credit to the Boston Celtics as well, just the way that they executed and came in with that game plan. They are the best team in the NBA per record for a reason. They've won the most games. There's not even another team as of right now that's won over 50 games. They're at 56 wins, 57 wins now on the season. So, all those things, the Bulls, you got to commend them for the way that the heart that they play with at times in this game. But the execution and math problem is something that continues to persist for the Chicago Bulls. We continue to see it happening, right? It's times where, if the Bulls are having a big deficit at the three-point line, what you need to do then, you need to own second chance points. You need to own fast break points. You need to get out in transition before defenses get a chance to set up. And the Bulls just did not do that last night, and that's where they've kind of made their butter. Yes, we had more fast break points than the Boston Celtics yesterday, 17-8, right? Though, so that battle was cool. But then when you look at like the second chance points, when you look at the rebounding battle, the fact that we got out rebounded by 12, those type of things, it's too much to overcome. It just is. And so, hopefully the Bulls go back to the drawing board. They understand what they need to do to try to kind of just play better, right? And you talk about the performances yesterday for the Bulls. DeMar DeRozan led the way with 28 points. He goes 12 of 19 from the field. DeMar DeRozan was good throughout most of the game. Can't really knock DeMar DeRozan's, his offense at least too much. The team as a whole played bad defense, so I'm not going to knock just DeMar on that when the team completely played bad defense last night. But he was the only 20-point scorer in last night's game. Now, we had 3 other players that scored at 14, with Io with 14, Caruso with 14, and Nikola Vucevic with 14, but only two rebounds total for the game for Nikola Vucevic. That's just not going to cut it. Kobe White, who's still trying to find his rhythm, he went 3 of 11 from the field for 11 points. He did chip in 10 assists, 5 rebounds as well, though, which is good for Kobe to find a way to continue to impact the game, even when his shot isn't falling. Then you had Dalen Terry. Dalen Terry went on probably the best stretch, like 7-minute stretch of his career, where he's defending, had dunks, right? Getting out, hit a three-pointer at one point in time in this game. This was one of Dalen Terry's best games that I got to give him credit for, the way that he played. And we didn't see any Javon Carter last night. We didn't see any Javonte Green, which I know a lot of people were hoping, but no Javon Carter last night, mainly because of Dalen Terry and the way that he was able to play. Those 12 points, 3 rebounds, and 1 assist, 1 steal that we had from Dalen Terry. Really good production from him. Batum as well, only 7 minutes off the bench, so maybe he's kind of fallen out of Billy Donovan's rotation a little bit, especially with maybe his performance the last couple of games. Only 7 minutes, 2 points from him, 1 assist. But then you looked at Torrey Craig, 11 points off the bench for Torrey Craig. He went 4-4 from the field, 3-3 from three-point range. And Andre Drummond, 7 points from him, 6 rebounds, and only 16 minutes worth of work from Andre Drummond. So, and again, the bad defense from the big man position was both Drummond and Nikola Vucevic. Like, they both played bad last night. Now, I will say this: Vooch with his performance on the boards, you got to give him a bigger knock on that than Andre Drummond. At least Andre Drummond was able to get 6 rebounds, but we got to tighten up, man. And it's the best team in the NBA, best team per record in our conference as well. Like, those are always going to be tough matchups for the Bulls, regardless of how many players that the Boston Celtics are out. They're also a really well-coached team. And we know that Billy Donovan does not do well against the other strategists at the head coaching position in the NBA. And we saw that earlier in the season as well. They swept the season series against, the Boston has swept the season series against us now this season. And that just kind of is what it is. Keep in mind, if the Bulls make it out the play-in, this is more than likely the opponent that we're looking at. So look at how big the gap is between the talent and execution level of the Boston Celtics and what it is for the Chicago Bulls. And then you'll probably see why I say that even if the Bulls did make it out the play-in or even made it to 500, it really doesn't mean a whole hell of a lot there. So, it is what it is when it comes down to it. The Celtics played a great game. They executed it well, and they just played better down the stretch and took advantage of the Chicago Bulls' weaknesses, and you got to give them credit for that. But with one of those weaknesses, it's where the Bulls, one of their former strengths, is starting to turn into a concern for the Chicago Bulls, and that's the Bulls' defense, right? When you look at it, the Chicago Bulls' defense is allowing the highest percentage of threes to their opponents in the entire NBA. In the NBA, we're second in opponent corner three-point attempts and frequency above the break three-point attempts as well. Teams shoot 37.2% from three against the Chicago Bulls, but get this, they shoot 41.8% on the corner threes, 28th in the league, which is one of the most effective shots in the game of basketball as well. When you look at it, it just comes down to the Bulls' defense not being able to guard pick and roll, which was something that we've seen over the course of the last couple of years for the Bulls. Then you add into that our inefficiency from guarding the three-point line. That just spells something that is going to be extremely difficult in the modern NBA for the Bulls to be effective at. The Bulls being top 5 in defense at some points of the season, and now the last month dropping to bottom 3 is because of the number of three-point shots their opponents have been making. It's really hard for the Bulls to overcome, like I always say, that math problem with the way that they've been performing. It's just tough, and it's going to maintain and continue to be tough unless they change some serious things with this team, and it doesn't seem like that's not coming at least this season, but it is something that they definitely need to look at going into next season. The Bulls are losing a lot of games because of math, but outside of the math, right, even if you can't defend the three well enough either. So the Bulls defense, which overall, per the talent that we have on the team, because we have some really bad one-on-one defenders, the Bulls defense has always been able to be better than what the it would tell you, right? What it would tell you. But at the end of the day, man, they got to really tighten in the defense. The defense is the thing that's kind of the biggest concern. And Billy Donovan really kind of echoed my concerns there with this quote from him. He says, the two things that stand out, and it's been a little better since the All-Star break, the two things that have hurt have been the rebounding and also the fouling. Those would be the two things that have stood out that kind of driven the defensive rating down. Our first shot defense has not been bad. It's been pretty good, but it's the second chance opportunities that have hurt us. And then also, I think some of the fouling, the ability to go vertical, not trying to reach some of those things. If you're looking at the last year compared to this year, that would be the two areas that have probably hurt our rating. Because, yeah, the Bulls have been a bad three-point shooting team for 3 years, so I guess that hasn't changed much. But when you give up as many second chance points as what the Bulls have, not being able to get key rebounds. I can't remember who left the voicemails. It was probably about a month ago at this point, and somebody had left a voicemail saying it's not just the fact that the Bulls sometimes get out rebounded, because they usually win the rebounding battle. It's the key rebounds, the momentum changing rebounds that the Bulls don't get, which definitely turns into when you get ate up by second chance points on top of giving up corner threes at the rate that the Chicago Bulls do. It's just tough, and I don't know if they can find a fix for it this season. I think it's kind of one of those things that is baked in right now. And you're going to have to spend a training camp kind of just getting that out of what the Bulls are doing and really kind of focusing on that aspect for the Chicago Bulls. You cannot be a team that can't make threes but gives up threes at an exponential rate. You just can't be that. That's a recipe for doom. It's bad efficiency. It's going to be bad on the defensive rating wise, and that's what we see keep affecting the Chicago Bulls over this stretch is that continued aspect of things. And like I said, I get it. The talk about getting to 500. We're always going to have those conversations. We're always going to have that talk. That is something that, it's eluded the Bulls. And it does feel like something, especially for how the Bull season started, if we were able to get back to 500. But more importantly than that, I would like to see things tighten up on the court. Let us getting to 500, that record be indicative, I guess I should say, I missed out a letter there, indicative of the performance that we're having, that we're playing like a team that deserves to do that. And make no mistake about it, right? What we say, the Bulls have a well over 500 record since December. They have one of the best records, top 10 records in the NBA over that time. But it's the finer things that are going to really make a difference, especially in play-in scenarios. And that's one thing that, I hope that the Bulls can find a way to tighten up a little bit, because when you get into the play-in, those teams are not doing nothing but focused on you for that week. You're going to get cooked. And so, it sucks that such a glaring issue with the Chicago Bulls on top of lack of ball movement. But that goes back to that episode I did a couple of weeks ago where I said, because some of my biggest concerns for the Chicago Bulls team to finish the season are the three-point shooting, are the giving up big leads, the inability to hold on to leads as well, right? Those type of things really do hurt this team, and the Bulls not having that edge. We still don't have that. We develop it. We have it sometimes in stretches, sometimes in games that we have it a little bit when the Bulls really get fired up, but we just don't have that consistently. And you see that teams are just executing better against the Chicago Bulls. And, some of that's coaching, some of that's performance on the court for sure. And, it just all paints into the scenario where I know I keep saying it. Getting to 500 really doesn't mean crap. It really doesn't mean crap. It doesn't. Like, in the grand scheme of things, it means nothing. Because the Bulls could potentially get to 500 and still be the 9th seed, still not make it out the play-in. It's about tightening up. I want to see better performance on the court. And some of that also is Billy Donovan's rotations. At this point, like, for example, in last night's game where Vooch wasn't really cooking offensively, definitely wasn't cooking defensively, I would have liked to see Andre Drummond, especially while we're getting out-rebounded. He had 6 rebounds in 16 minutes. Play him a little bit more than you're playing Vooch, right? And Billy Donovan seeming like he's kind of tied into this is when we make rotations versus this is what the situation is telling us the rotation should probably be. It's going to be the undoing for the Bulls, especially against some of the better and deeper teams in the NBA. Not having that situational awareness that Billy Donovan lacks a lot of times is going to be something that bites the Bulls in the ass. And I'm not saying that's the only problem. The Bulls the players got to communicate better in pick and roll situations. They got to understand, so many times in plays last night, Stacey King stopped the game to kind of show where the Bulls should have rotated on defense, how they could have had their heads up, been more aware to kind of stop some of the easy plays at the bucket, right? And so even though that's not something that killed the Bulls in this game, the three-point shooting killed us more than that. But if you tighten up those things, it makes the ability to kind of overcome that impact of three-point shooting a little bit easier when you tighten up the things that are in your control. So like Billy Donovan saying that we have initial good shot defense on the first shot, the second chance opportunities is where the Bulls fall apart at. They don't rotate well. They don't communicate well. And that's what leads to those second chance opportunities blowing the Bulls up some. So let's hope that they can tighten it up. We've been a top 10 defense over the course of this NBA season. Let's hope that we can continue, we can get back to that. But this month, defensively for the Bulls has been bad. It's just been bad. March has been a bad month for defensive efficiency for the Chicago Bulls, and we got to tighten that up. But, in talking about tightening things up, Billy Donovan actually laid out a challenge to Ayo Dosunmu, and this is where Ayo's been playing his best, right? This is one of the best stretches of Ayo Dosunmu's career. Not too many people are going to argue with that. But he said this, Billy Donovan, direct quote, "I think the biggest thing I've been challenging him on is the consistency part. And again, not really basing it on scoring. Although he's had some pretty good scoring nights these last 3 games, I think it's how he's playing. He's getting downhill to the basket. He's making good decisions. He's taking the shots that are high percentage, good shots for him. And I think he's making good decisions with the ball. Just need him to continue to emerge and continue to get better. I also was really pleased with Kobe White tonight. This is last night's game, 13 points off the bench. Well, last game, not the game against the Boston Celtics. The way he looked physically, I thought he had really good bounce. His legs look back under him. He'll get his timing once he starts to play a little bit more. But I thought physically he looked good. We know, and I said it on yesterday's episode, Ayo Dosunmu and Kobe White are so important to whatever the Chicago Bulls are going to be for the remainder of this season. And Billy Donovan's noticing it. He's acknowledging it. Ayo Dosunmu is a one-man fast break, and he's been great at doing that. I saw some times last night against the Boston Celtics where I would have liked Ayo to go ahead and attack rather than try to set somebody up. But again, that's something that's kind of learned with confidence and things like that. But we know that Ayo and what he can be. We now see that ceiling for Ayo Dosunmu that we once talked about of being like a Drew Holiday type player that kind of came down a little bit after his sophomore year. I think that those comparisons are kind of back on, right? But he needs to show the consistency part of it. And I love that Billy Donovan focused it and said it's not just about scoring, it's about how you get your points, basically, to paraphrase what Billy Donovan said. And that's an important part. So often as fans, we look at that total at the end of the night. Oh, got 25 points on 13 shots. He did pretty damn good. But it's also how you're getting those shots. And Ayo is benefiting from some of the most high percentage shots in the NBA when he attacks the rim and understands how he can take players off that quick first step that he has paired with his strength that he also has. So, you just want to see that continued part of the game for Ayo Dosunmu. I feel like it's safe. I've said that before. I think that the growth that we've seen from him, it's more than enough reason now to think it's legit. Now, we need to see him do it again next season, right? And we need to see him and Kobe and what they look like, because I do think there is a high chance right now that our starting backcourt going into next season is going to be Kobe White and Ayo Dosunmu in that starting backcourt. Now, there's also a chance that Zach LaVine is back on this team, but I do think that there is a possibility of that. And the way that these players have grown, Billy Donovan has noticed. I tell you what, this team ain't going to make it out the play-in if Ayo and Kobe aren't playing well, right? They're not going to hold on to the 9th seed either if they're not going to continue to play well. And that's what we need to continue to see for the Chicago Bulls team, man, is these two players that have been so important for the Bulls and the way that our ceiling has risen this season. You got to continue to see them playing well. And hopefully that continues for the team, man. Kobe White specifically, we need to get him back in rhythm. And that's when you're out with any level of injury, and the fact that Kobe White avoided what looked like a nasty and could have been a major injury, give him credit for that. Got to kind of find your way to get back. But we've seen Kobe go through down stretches over this season, even without an injury, right? So I have faith he's going to come back out on the other side of this. The Washington Wizards game next week is going to probably be a lot of kind of a way for a lot of players to get a little bit of a tune-up heading into the end part of the season. At least let's hope so. And you guys know it's Sunday, so we got to go over the schedule next week. The Bulls have 4 games on the docket over the next 7 days. Monday against Washington, Wednesday against Indiana, Friday we face the Brooklyn Nets, and then Sunday we face the Minnesota Timberwolves. And again, as we said before, there are no easy games for the Chicago Bulls, none. Not one of these games are looked at as easy. I don't care how many wins any of these teams have, especially the Washington Wizards. The Bulls cannot overlook any of this. I'm not expecting the Bulls to go 4-0 in the week at all, right? But these are games that are all against teams that we've won against before. These are winnable games or teams that we've played really tight before. They got to be locked in. And hopefully they use the day off to kind of reset, see what they're going to do. We're at home for the next 2 games, which is really good, right? Washington, Indiana, both those games are at home before we head out on the road against Brooklyn and Minnesota. And the Bulls just got to lock in, man. We know what this team can be. It's just time for them to show it over the next week. We're into the final 11 games of the season, ladies and gentlemen. Final 11 games, man. And the season ends, the regular season ends March 14th. So we're 3 weeks away from the season basically ending. The Bulls got to lock in over this, man. And we'll see if they can. This is going to be an important stretch. The Atlanta Hawks are nipping right at the Chicago Bulls' heels, especially because they won last night, whereas the Bulls lost. So they've closed that gap now. The Bulls have a 2.5 game lead over the Atlanta Hawks with 11 games left. If the Bulls don't lock in, the Atlanta Hawks can pass up the Chicago Bulls for the 9th seed. Not the 9th seed, 10th seed, that kind of basically have to go the same path either way, right? But, we'll see what happens with that. But overall, the Bulls schedule next week, that's the schedule. I think they can go 2-2 over that week for sure. They can even maybe go 3-1. I think that's a possibility. But the Bulls really have to lock in and take care of the business so that they can get those wins. Let's hope that they do that. But with that said, we got one voicemail we got to play today. This voicemail is from Shay. Let's go ahead and get into that now.
Oh, what's up, man? Look, I don't know if you've been paying attention to the standings or not, or you probably don't care at this point. But not only are we close to 500 if we win tonight's game against not only do we tie and we make 500 if we beat the Houston Rockets tonight, but we would be 3 games behind. We'd be 3 games away from behind the Philadelphia 76ers and the Miami Heat. 2 teams which we own the tiebreaker against. Now look, I'm not saying that we could catch up to them, but we possibly could catch the 7th or 8th seed, especially with I think like 12 or 10 games left. I mean, a lot could happen. And then too, like I said, we like 3 or 4 games behind Miami and Philly. Not to mention we own the tiebreaker, I think, between both of them. I know we do own it against Philly at least, because Philly only beat us one time this season. We possibly could be in a situation where we're only able to play one playing game if we win that. So I mean, I'm gonna keep hope alive, man, because I see Philly. They're playing some tough games upcoming next. I mean, I don't know if we're gonna catch Miami because that Eric Spoelstra team, that they're gonna always be fighting. But I mean, you know what I'm saying? But we could probably catch Philly. But that's just what I think. Anyway, tell me what you think. Peace.
Listen, I get to this. You left this before. The Bulls can't even get to 500, man. And like I said before, the Bulls aren't getting past 9th seed. I get it that statistically we're not outside of moving up to 8th and moving up to 7th, but it's not going to happen. The Bulls have been way too inconsistent for me to feel comfortable to say that this Chicago Bulls team is going to get above 500 this season. Yes, do I know it's a possibility? Yeah. I'd much rather be surprised by them actually doing it than expect them to do it and to keep being let down. That's the thing with this Bulls team. They continually, every time we get close to 500, we slip. We go on a 3-game losing streak. It happens the same time for 2 years in a row. The same thing has been happening. So ultimately, whatever the Bulls record finishes at, it's not about that. Get yourself ready. Get yourself prepared. Get your play on the court together. Get everybody as healthy as possible. And then let's see what happens in the play-in. But this 500 record that we have all waited for, and I've talked about on Belt here and Locked on Bulls several times, at the grand scheme of things, it doesn't matter. The Bulls, even if they do get to 500, there's a high probability the Bulls are still going to be the 9th seed. And that just is what it is. The path is going to be the path. Can the Bulls go through the play-in? Can they make some noise in the playoffs? Listen, nothing's outside the realm of possibility, but with how the Bulls play has been inconsistent right now, I got some serious concerns, especially when the intensity amps up in a play-in / playoff type atmosphere if the Bulls are going to be able to do that. Like, the Bulls haven't been like a team like the Houston Rockets that are playing with house money and playing free at this point and just going about just playing basketball, executing, right? The Bulls need to lock in and get to that area if they really want to have any hopes of getting above 500. But like I said before, the 500 mark, cool, it is what it is. Yes, it's a point to look at and say, hey, we achieved something, especially with the slow start. But the Bulls probably aren't going to move up the standings, even if they do get to 500. At least that's my standpoint. You guys can let me know what you think down below. But that's the show for today, ladies and gentlemen. Make sure you guys are following the show at Bull Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, bullcentralpod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, thanks to you guys. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See red if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.